Hey, let's try that again. Let's try that again. Hey guys, sorry. Hey, let's try that again. Let's try that again. Hey guys,
Hey, we
sorry.
got a finger or a thumbs up. Okay, let's all do this again because nobody heard us ripping into Searcher and Hide and trying to set that shit up now. So
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were talking about Searcher and Hide. Yeah, nah, yeah, sorry. Um, so we're gonna have to send a thank you and a sorry. So at least we caught it good. There we are. Thank you and sorry. There you go. There we go. Perfect.
you
All
know,
right.
one thing we're never going to. This show is never going to get is never going to get an award because we can't get the errors fixed.
Well, I mean, if we had a local team that rewards botches, then we might be in the running for that.
Is our goal to actually get on Botchamania now? I'm guessing.
I don't know. I mean, we've got to be over in Europe if we want to have a chance to get at that. And so anyway, Searcher and Hide. I mean, the only thing that from this week that's compared to last week is we will take a break and we will have a shorter broadcast. So just
You mean I can go potty?
yes, exactly. Yeah, because we all
You
want
don't pay me enough for this stuff, Ruby. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
I know. That's why I have to operate the board myself. I'm a cheapskate. I don't want to hire a producer. Besides, I don't want them looking at me for 2 hours. Kind of gives me the.
Nobody wants to look at you for 2 hours. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Well, you're doing this on your own. You got to turn a blind eye. So, oh well.
You know, this is the kind of compact you think you probably need to use to put your makeup on beforehand. It has a razor blade in it, Ruby. But just keep that in mind.
Oh, it's not worth all that, man. Not worth all that. Well, we're okay. But hey, let's get to some big stories here. Obviously, if you're seeing my feed, you can see the nice decoration I got in the background here, and because we can definitely smell what The Rock is cooking now, because this man is our new hero, at least my new hero anyway. Dwayne The Rock Johnson and business partner Danny Garcia, which by the way is his ex-wife, with Jerry Cardinal's Redbird Capital, purchased the XFL this past Monday for $15 million. The acquisition of the NFL, or we'll quote, the acquisition of the XFL with my talented partners, Danny Garcia and Jerry Cardinal, is an investment for me that's rooted deeply in two things: my passion for the game and my desire to always take care of the fans, Johnson said in a statement. Quote, with pride and gratitude for all that I've built with my own two hands, I plan to apply these calluses to the XFL and look forward to creating something special for the players, fans, and everyone involved for the love of football. Scott Shosnick of Sportico broke terms with the deal this past Monday, which came just before the league and its assets were set to go up for auction. Vince McMahon's Football League filed for bankruptcy protection earlier this year after the COVID-19 pandemic that wiped out the inaugural season of the upstart's return, which only got through halfway. For Dwayne, Jerry, and myself, this property represents an incredible opportunity. It is the confluence of great passion, tradition, and possibility, said Danny Garcia, who, of course, like I said, mentioned, is The Rock's ex-wife. Quote, sports and entertainment are the foundations of the businesses I have built. Melding our expertise combined with our commitment to deliver exciting and inspiring unique content has us all focused on developing the XFL brand into a multimedia experience that our athletes, partners, and fans will proudly embrace and love, end quote. McMahon filed for bankruptcy protection in April, a month after the COVID-19 pandemic that caused the league to stop play. It is not believed that existing television contracts with ESPN, ABC, and Fox will be honored, though that could change with Johnson at the helm of this new group. Well, I'll tell you what. For me, honestly, I am a sports fan. I'm not really a big fan of what's happened lately with a lot of the major sports. That's for another time. But I am glad that at least The Rock is putting forth an effort for the XFL. And the thing I'm going to touch on is this. I mean, with The Rock obviously starting out in WWE, but he's applied himself in Hollywood, major success, created his own brand, major success, with the help of Garcia. And now, I'm kind of wondering here, GQ, do you think do you think The Rock is going to be successful with this run? I mean, do you see the XFL going more than one season if they come back in 2021?
I almost think I want to say it's a smokescreen. I think it's them helping Vince. Let's look at everything to where Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy. Now we have Jeffrey's Toy Chest.
Yeah, that's true.
It was to protect a lot of stuff from everything going on. And April was the best way for that to happen because nobody knew what was going to be going on. They were mid-season whenever the coronavirus hit, and they had to do something to save grace or lose a lot more money again.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
So that was probably to protect... I don't know if it was like an LLC or anything with it to begin with. I doubt it. I really do. But it was probably to protect it a lot more than that. And this is probably to get it back up and going and guaranteed that somebody probably still going to be steering the helm a little bit. But you got Rock. If he's going to be in full charge of it to begin with, who better to be in full charge of a football organization than somebody that actually played football?
Yeah. And also think about it. I mean, and I fell off the wagon trying to watch the rest of the episodes, but remember he had Ballers on HBO, and I had to see if he's even still doing episodes of that. But I mean, big time. I mean, his passion for football just goes deep. I mean, besides, playing in high school, then University of Miami, and then coming up. And, so I'm just quite interested to see, and just kudos to The Rock for trying to bring it back. And that's why, hey, I finally broke out my Battlehawks banner that's hanging over my window. So, it's just there for tonight. And, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm just interested about that. But we go from interesting in a good way to another story, GQ, that you've got for us that's kind of interesting and not so good way here. So what do you got on this one?
Yeah, you got the cool sports one, and I get the crazy Marty Jannetty stuff.
Yeah, well, you're crazy, so you can handle it. So
I'm going to read it as it was written for me, but it's one of those things.
Yes.
I have a lot of opinions either way on this, actually. But Bleacher Report broke the story this past Monday regarding former WWE star Marty Jannetty appearing to admit to a crime in a since-deleted Facebook post that also included anti-gay and racist comments. But guess what? We got a pic of that Facebook post right here, and then we're going to say it right now. And what the post said was as follows. I never told no one this, even my brother Gino, because Gino would have killed him, and I didn't want my brother gone. Hell, he only recently came home from Vietnam. I was 13, working at Victory Lanes Bowling Alley, buying weed from I won't say the term, but a derogatory comment towards a gay person that worked there, and he put his hands on me. He dragged me around to the back of the building. You know what he was going to try to do. Oh, cool. We got the post over here, though, too. So.
Yep.
I wish I would have known that, so I could have done it a little bit sooner, because of the time delay here. But
right.
That was the very first time he made a man disappear. They never found him. They should have looked at the Chattahoochee River, but Winnie, the girl in these pics, I likes you so damn... Sorry, I can't help it.
I know.
I like you so damn much. Probably my favorite, but I promised myself way back when nobody would ever hurt me again. That includes you. I loved you, but you hurt me with your fucking Jamaican jealousy. You can go on your own way. I don't need you. Just in case you're wondering, the Chattahoochee River flows next to Jannetty's hometown of Columbus, Georgia, and a bowling alley, Victory Lanes Family Bowling Center, was once situated along the river in Columbus. According to TMZ, the Columbus, Georgia Police Department issued the following statement this past Wednesday. We're going to look into this. The first step will be seeing if we have any missing persons or unidentified remains cases that match the limited information on this post. On a side note, checking out Marty Jannetty's Facebook page recently, he has been posting pictures of his road days that are nearly risque, to Facebook standards, and a few days ago he made a Facebook post plain stating that he just pissed himself.
Yeah.
Drugs are bad, okay? I'm going to say that right now. Trust me, this is where facial stuff works on a video podcast. Jannetty's nuts, okay? And he's probably actually tasted some.
Oh, well,
and it's just one of those, it's like, I've heard so many stories about he's worked indie shows and done more snow than it was on the ground during winter. I mean, he's out there now. But on the other end of that too, he wasn't on drugs back then. What he did, I almost want to say he could probably get away with a self-defense plea on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, there would
because
have to be a
again,
lie.
he was 13 years old. The guy was trying to do something to him. He was trying to protect himself.
Yeah.
How, like, if he literally did this, and I don't know how Bobby haven't resurfaced a long time ago before that.
Yeah, but think of it this way.
For all we know, it could be basically a bullshit story as well too.
I know, but man, I mean, yeah, because I mean, I had to go check out that page here too because I mean, with Marty Jannetty within the last week, he's like posting pictures, I guess, when he was on the road with Sean, you know, as the Rockers, and he posted with like some type of dinner plate over his junk, and that's it. I'm like, this guy is totally out there. But think of it this way:
it was a nut platter. Just saying.
Think of it this way, though. This is Marty Jannetty, 13 years old, trying to buy weed off somebody. The man is already messed up to begin with. All right, he's apparently his childhood had not been that good if he's out buying weed at 13. Whether it be a mom and dad who don't give a damn about it.
Well, especially working in a bowling alley at 13 too. So.
Yeah, because when I bowled at 12, that's all I wanted is I wonder if there's anybody here selling weed here, so I can, because I'm kind of bored. It drags in between turns. Oh
For
my
all
God.
we know, the guy was probably. I can't even make a joke about it. Never mind. I'm not even going to. But it was going to be a bowling alley type joke, and I was just going to leave it at that.
Oh man.
I actually have common sense on it because that stuff is really nothing to joke about, honestly. And it's one of those things. It's like, what I mean.
Were you going to say
Marty's nuts. I'm just going to say it again. Marty Jannetty is nuts.
Yeah. And there's a lot that just went down the gutter, but you know, this would have to be a lot to overturn anything, especially when 13 or like remains. I mean, Jannetty's like isn't he like in his 60s now? Like 60, 61? This is like nearly 50 years ago. I mean, what are they going to do with the guy? You know, I mean, there has to be a lot.
Look what they did with Snuka. They still brought it back up.
Yeah, well,
so was he guilty? More than likely. I mean, but they still brought it back up and everything. What that does is tries to get stuff done. Keep in mind, though, unless he's really tweaked out off his ass right now, he would be a friggin' idiot to bring that up publicly, even though he deleted it publicly, for it to get out there.
Yeah.
Marty is the poster child for somebody who should wear a shirt that says, "Put the Facebook down."
Yeah, put the Facebook down. Oh, well, you know, Marty, I mean, I just, he's had, I know he's had to deal with a lot of, he's been on probation in the state of Georgia for many, many years, and that's why he hasn't, getting out and traveling and doing shows is, I mean, even if he tries these, I mean, he tried doing like some live feed, like, I think like an Extreme Rules viewing or something like that with somebody. I don't know. I couldn't understand him, but he's trying to talk the way that the Rockers did back in the '80s, and he's not as fluent as he used to be. So,
I'm just kind of curious if kayfabe commentaries or RF Video have done a shoot with him. I kind of want to see how that went. Because we know how the Iron Sheik ones go, and we know Sheiky's on some stuff.
Oh no, yeah, she.
So it makes me wonder what the hell his shoots are going to sound like.
Oh man, no, I have no clue.
The only
But
thing worse than all that is funny that when Alfonso was talking about Sandman, good Lord, we know Sandman is a little messed up too.
yeah, yeah,
There's no because when he was booked for a signing out here in St. Louis, yeah, I'm in the area for right now for some reason, because I forgot about kayfabe. But when he was booked at a signing in St. Louis, he's the one that messed it up for any other people after that because he rang up a $380 bar tab for himself.
yeah,
All Long Island iced teas. He's taking a potty break every 5 to 10 minutes to go in there and check the booking sheets for horse racing and stuff.
yeah.
So when Bill Alfonso told that story about Sandman, I wasn't surprised.
No, no, yeah. Sandman's twisted, but man.
Sandman has A to Z in all in United States alphabet, German alphabet, and Roman numerals.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
yeah. Well, like I said, we'll move on. We got one more story here. Then we're going to take a break, and then when we come back from the break, we'll have Luke Roberts on here joining us. So we got one more story here. Then we're going. We'll get right to that. So this past Monday, and I didn't even know about this until I was casually watching. I'm like, what the hell is this now? So apparently, Raw Underground debuted after supposed to have been after Monday Night Raw, but that all got, I don't know, I didn't understand that at all. But some wrestling superstars that were formerly with WWE had their own take and opinion to the debut of Raw Underground this past Monday night, right after Raw. WWE backstage panelist and former WWE champion CM Punk had a favorable opinion about the show's debut. Punk stated, quote, "I absolutely loved it. I want to see Nia Jackson there. They should get more women in there. Let us see some bodies get broken." The idea that Shane McMahon and all these people would be in the Performance Center and for the whole 3 hours, and they cut right into what they were doing in various segments is pretty cool. 3 hours of no-holds-barred fights and strippers, that's all I want to see, end quote. However, on the other side of the spectrum, longtime former WWE superstar and current AEW wrestler Matt Hardy had a different vocal opinion on the disapproval of the concept. Hardy took to Twitter to poke fun at the idea and said, quote, "Pretty excited for the Fight Club spoof that will happen on hashtag BTE." Of course, that is the show Being the Elite, which is a YouTube channel that features several different AEW wrestlers. Impact Wrestling commentator Josh Matthews, who previously worked for WWE, also took stabs at Raw Underground and made the post on Twitter commenting on the feud between Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly, stating, quote, "This one might need to be settled in Impact Underground hashtag." And of course, he was just kidding at that. So anyway, so I watched the segments that went throughout the whole night, GQ, and I don't know. I mean, it seemed legit at first, but then you could tell it was just kind of being like a setup, and ended up and ultimately it was just kind of a disappointment, to be honest. So.
Four words. Brawl for it all.
Yeah. Brawl for, or Brawl for all, or whatever.
But this one, they're gimmicking because the last time it didn't go the directions it went. It basically destroyed a major push for what would have happened with Dr. Dusty Williams.
Yeah.
And then it was a failed push on Bart Gunn. I mean, so...
Yeah. Yeah, and we already saw that story, the dark side of the ring.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was so bad that actually got it as a dark side of the ring story. I mean, so let's think about that for a second.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, and CM Punk, I mean, do you think CM Punk is really going to be honest about that? I mean, the guy's getting paid by WWE to say something ridiculous like that. And for CM Punk to be a former UFC fighter, yet he's only had 2 fights and he lost both of them, by the way. But... for him to come out and say something like that, I mean, it really, really is cheese beyond everything that I can imagine. But that was Raw Underground. I I don't know if it's going to come back next week. I have no concept of what's going on with that, but we'll just see. Watch next week, see if, for any type of
on Punk's comment though.
Yeah,
you don't see the sarcasm in that, really?
Well, yeah, I kinda, but it's like he's
I mean, I especially where he basically has some little shoots in there a little bit. Let us see some bodies getting broken. 3 hours of no holds barred. I think that was a shoot towards the movie. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, of course.
And that's the thing. It's like Punk's not under contract with WWE as far as I know anymore. I could be wrong, but it's never stopped Punk from saying his opinion when he was under contract.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, it's still. I guess I can kind of get the concept, but it's still. I don't know why they launched it. If they're too bored, whatever the hell they're doing in WWE, but it's not really intriguing my interest to really want to stay and watch Raw throughout the entire show. There's still a thing called the DVR, and so I'll just skim through like whatever parts are interesting, and I'm usually done within an hour of a 3-hour show. So it's whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's just me, though. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a break. Those are our opening stories here. And when we come back, we will have Luke Roberts on with us. So, guys, go up, get a drink, and we're going to be going full steam ahead when we come back. So, see you here in a short bit. All right, everybody, we are back, and whoo, yeah, it was a much needed break. Just want to make sure we get everything all together here, and I'm sure GQ is, yeah, whatever. GQ was doing nothing. I had a lot to do. He said, "When are we gonna get back on?" Well, we're back on now. So, anyway, so all right, so I think we are ready for our featured guest here of the evening, everybody. So, our guest tonight has started his involvement in the professional wrestling business going back to 1988. Started paying dues in the business with notable duties outside the ring for his first 7 years. And after that, he moved to in-ring competition and fulfilled many other roles up through today. His resume includes working with several major names in professional wrestling, with professional wrestling stars that are in the major wrestling promotions today, all the way to WWE Hall of Famers. His current role is in the media relations. His current role is the media relations director for Dynamo Pro Wrestling here in St. Louis, Missouri. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a false count everywhere. Welcome to our featured guest tonight, Mr. Luke Roberts.
Professional wrestlers, both male and female, that step inside the squared circle, and you go back and you look at all the things that I've had the honor and privilege to be around in the past 33 plus years in professional wrestling. I mean, it really kind of takes you back a little bit. I mean, it's really cool to be able to be here tonight with you guys talking about things. Like I said, I've known yourself and GQ for many a year. And guys, before I get things started here tonight, I know we were talking about things earlier on, but I do want to mention two people who I have had some dealings with in my career who recently have passed away, that being the Missouri Rebel Kerry Lee and Marvelous Mitch Ryder, both of which passed away over the course, I believe, of the last 2 days. Both great in-ring competitors, and like I said, it's really been making me think about professional wrestling as a whole and all the travels and whatnot. And again, they're going to be sorely missed, and tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of things, a lot of time in professional wrestling. And again, it's an honor and privilege to be here tonight, right here on this very great program.
All right. Yeah, Luke, yeah, we thank you very much for joining us. And, yeah, very excited to kind of go over, gosh, going back to 1988 is when you got started here. So before you got started, when did you start for interest in and love for pro wrestling? Did you how young were you when you started wrestling? I mean, not wrestling, but when you started watching, because we're going to get to that here in a minute. But I'm sure I started when I was 8 when I started watching wrestling. So how old were you when you got hooked on it?
Well, I got to tell you right now, I mean, for me, wrestling has been pretty much a lifelong journey. I mean, I followed my brother's interest in professional wrestling. He was very big in the Wrestling at the Chase era, and I remember sitting back when I was real little and looking at some of the old Wrestling at the Chase programs and looking at some of the programs and the autographs that he had some of the wrestlers like Spike Huber, Bruiser Bob Sweetan, King Kong Bruiser Brody, Superstar Billy Graham, Harley Race, Bob Backlund, Ric Flair, and it just the names and all those things. That was the first inkling of it, but I got to tell you, the thing that really hooked me into professional wrestling, and I tell everybody that ever talks about pro wrestling, I remember when I was 5 years old, and I would remember being a native St. Louis in here. St. Louis has always been a hotbed for professional wrestling back in the days of Wrestling at the Chase and the era of Sam Muchnick. But I remember back when I was 5 years old, and I would take those weekend journeys down to my grandmother's in southern Missouri, down to a little itty-bitty town called Piedmont, Missouri, which for those that are not necessarily familiar with their Missouri geography, it's about 2 hours south of St. Louis. And I remember being in my grandmother's house, and it was almost like clockwork that dinner had to be on the table by 5 p.m. because at 5:05, it did not matter what was going on. The TV had to be on to WTBS to watch World Championship Wrestling at the time, was Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
And again, if we were even 1 minute late, my grandmother would never let my dad or my mom hear the end of it. And again, whether it was the four of us or my brother came down to make some of those journeys with us, I mean, it was family time. It was weekend together time. It was 3 generations of my family all being able to come together around the sport that's professional wrestling. That was definitely that moment where I said, this is something that I'm going to follow for many years.
Nice. Yeah. So I mean, it's good to get hooked when you're young, and then follow. When you have a dream, you can follow that dream for as long as you have. I mean, it's definitely something that it's got to make you feel like that you've completed something within within the circle of life of your existence on here. So just want to give everybody that's looking at Facebook right now. I mean, of course, we're streaming on Facebook and YouTube, but we're looking at our comments on Facebook here. Night Owl throwing a little jab here. Says rumor mill Luke Roberts once had a match versus a piece of broccoli while in his mother's belly. He won by submission.
Oh, no. Hold on. I'm going to set this one up here a little bit. Luke has been fighting all of his life. He had to fight his brother for his meals half the damn time to begin with, and then he feuded with him in wrestling. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, such a trip down memory lane. Such a trip down memory lane, gentlemen. I mean, again, when you look at professional wrestling, and thank you, Night Owl, for the commentary, and I want to say thank you to all those that are tuning in tonight, Facebook Live, YouTube, making it a point to join us here tonight on the program. Guys, I got to tell you right now, that love of professional wrestling really kind of it snowballed, because when you sit there and I talk about my brother and how he just had a natural love for professional wrestling, I know, Ruby, I know that you and GQ both have had many run-ins with my family over the course of both of your careers in professional wrestling.
I'll be the first to say it was your brother that really helped get me into the business more. I got into it through the promoter at the time, but your brother was one of the ones that actually helped me with the training, working with me on stuff and everything like that. I mean, I'll owe it to a lot of people, like from Derek Stone to your brother to everybody that was even involved in, like Bama and everything. But your brother did do a whole hell of a lot, and he got his training from people like Ed Smith, actually, and Pete Madden and others like that as well.
Well, GQ, you hit right on point. I mean, again, it was one of those where I sit back to thinking about another key point very early on, in not in my career per se, but in my life. I remember when I was about probably a little bit before I turned 10, and I had an opportunity. I was at an event, and there was a gentleman who I saw a table or two over, and he was taking notes on a notebook pad. And he started talking with my brother and I, and talking about professional wrestling, and we were really enjoying ourselves. And I didn't realize until about 20 minutes later on, I thought something was up. And imagine my surprise being 10 years old and being with family at a professional wrestling event and seeing your name, your picture in the middle of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch talking about professional wrestling. I mean, that was one of those where I got to tell you right now, that connection with professional wrestling, from my grandmother down to my mother and my father to my brother, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later on. It's even gone on into the next generations of my own family. When you sit down and you look at it, I mean, professional wrestling has been a part of my family for as long as I can remember. And like I said, I would be remiss if I did not say that when it comes down to it, he did have a very, very large impact on my professional wrestling career.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to always keep always those who helped you get in the business. I mean, always be gratitude goes a long way in this business, and and then in giving back. So yeah, so always keeping that in mind, and that's awesome. So I'm not even going to ask you how old you were in 1988, but So how did because you mentioned about, with the small little things that you did, for other wrestling promotions. So how did you get your foot in the door, getting involved in the business at a very young age like you did?
Well, getting into professional wrestling the way I did, kind of ironically, you're talking about paying it forward, paying the respects to those that came before you in the world of professional wrestling. My actual connection into professional wrestling came in a unique situation. My brother was very heavily involved in professional wrestling and a lot of outside business ventures. And there was a gentleman who was a mainstay here for many years on the professional wrestling scene, and that was a man who went by a lot of the nickname, and yeah, a lot of people are going to kind of joke here. Used to call himself the Beast from the East, John Blackheart.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
kind of ironically, through an outside business venture, John Blackheart walked up to my brother one evening. They had known each other for a while. Like, you're a good-sized guy. Maybe you need to get into the world of professional wrestling. And of course, didn't take a lot for my brother to figure out, I'm a good-sized guy. I'm a strong guy. I got a knowledge of what's going on with professional wrestling. Maybe this is the avenue. And whenever he started training for professional wrestling, I mean, again, you mentioned a lot of great names of the day. I mean, talk about Ed Smith. You talk about the late Little Dynamite Tony Costa. You talk about a wide variety of wrestlers. Pete Madden comes to mind as well. But when you sit there and look at it, for my first couple of years in professional wrestling, I was doing things outside the ring. I mean, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I first got involved in professional wrestling, I was 10 years old. And at 10 years old, I wasn't going to be getting inside a ring and competing against professional wrestlers. That's not even remotely right. But, I mean, I was getting the opportunity to sit there, running ring jackets, playing entrance musics, helping out with the promotion that my brother was working with at the time, helping to come up with story ideas for their programs, spending many an evening at the local copy store, making sure that all the copies of the programs were done. Then it was the idea of going and starting and taking photographs of wrestlers so they could have promotional photos to be available for sale. I mean, it really was just a happening opportunity. And literally by about the time I got to about 13, 14 years old, not only did my brother and John Blackheart see something in me, but another man that a lot of people in the professional wrestling world here in St. Louis know a lot about and have given a ton of credit, and I can't give him enough credit, is a man by the name of the Human Wrecking Ball, Pete Madden. Pete Madden is a man who, when I first started really watching wrestling here, there were a lot of great, you could call them cruiserweights, you could call them light heavyweights. I mean, I sit back and look at it. I look at wrestlers like Keith Smith, like John Blackheart, like Jim Ward, like Danny Boy Hawkins. You look at the Rock and Roll Kids. You look at Pete Madden. You look at Dino Blade. You look at Ty Dalton. You look at all these wrestlers that were right there in that 200 to about 215, 220 range. And there were several of them that really saw something in me. But Pete was one of those to say, hey, I know how you've been. I know how you are. I know that you may not be the biggest guy now, but keep working at it. Keep being that motivator. And I'll tell you right now, between my brother, John Blackheart, and Pete Madden, if those three men had not stepped up for me and given me the guidance both inside and outside of the ring, I would tell you right now, I would not be a millionth of where I am today in professional wrestling without those three men.
Yeah, and mentioned John Blackheart and Pete Madden, recent inductees. I think Madden was 18, and Blackheart was last year in the Midwest Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame, being inducted there, and well deserved for what these guys have done. Putting their time in the business, especially just great guys, and obviously your brother. At the time, we've got a picture up here right now with you and your brother. I think this is through MVWA, with holding up a sign, and so it's very young, and yes, all of us at one time probably a slender portion of version of ourselves back then. But yeah, it's pretty cool. to see and reflect on these times, that getting started in the business. So, trained by your brother John Blackheart, Pete Madden. So, how long were you in training, by the way?
Well, Ruby, training for me was probably one of the longest trainings. You hear a lot about professional wrestlers who are in training a few months, or wrestlers that have been in training for a year or two. I'm not going to lie to you. I trained for wrestling before I made my debut. I was training for almost 5 years.
Oh
I mean,
my
to
God.
give you an idea, I first stepped inside inside the squared circle when I was 13 years old. And again, at 13, you really don't know a lot about much anything. I mean, you're still trying to understand what life is all about. But the idea of being in there and again, I would sit down, I would watch the wrestlers. There are a countless number. I could be here for 6 weeks talking about all the different wrestlers I had the opportunity to watch inside the ring. But
Yeah.
for the better part of that time, it was, I mean, literally, usually 2 to sometimes 3 nights a week, after all the regular trainees would go and they would go through their drills and they would go through all their conditioning training and all the things of the like. People like my brother, like John Blackheart, like Pete Madden, would have the opportunity to, once everybody was done, they would sit in there and they would take, and that's one thing I feel very fortunate for. I almost pretty much had one-on-one training with all 3 of those men. And I mean, again, in today's world, you talked about it earlier on, Ruby, the idea of John Blackheart and Pete Madden, both members of the Midwest Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. These 2 men have done so much. And I feel very fortunate that they have gotten the respect and the credit that they deserve, because, I mean, again, when you sit there and you look at it, these 2 men gave a ton of knowledge and information, and the metaphor, the blood, the sweat, and the tears inside that squared circle. And I got to tell you, when I made my debut, I was just under 2 months before my 18th birthday. And I'll tell you right now, my first match, I'm not going to sugarcoat it to any of the listeners here of the program. I was in a 2-on-1 matchup. I was in a matchup with a gentleman by the name of Hyper J. Higby taking on Billy Bob, the farmer from Fairplay, Missouri. And not only did I learn what it was like to lose my first match, I wound out what it was like to have my first concussion because my tag team partner ran me into the ring post after the match. So just because I had trained and learned about professional wrestling doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that I wasn't going to learn how things were inside the professional wrestling ring. It's one of those things happen. You get hurt. It's a contact sport. And I learned it very quickly, even in my very first match.
Oh yeah.
Did you get the Billy Bob chop?
Oh, man. I'm going to tell you right now, and that's one thing I feel very fortunate. There's not a lot of copies of my first match out there. This is going to show my age. I have a copy on VHS tape, which recently just got, thanks to a company here, about 15, 20 minutes from my home, just got converted to DVD about 6 months ago. And there were about 30 people in the crowd during my first match. And the chop, my father was starting to, hearing wasn't the best, but he had the volume on the TV up when he had to see my first match. And I could tell you how quickly he jumped. He said it sounded like something like a bottle rocket had gone off when I got hit for the first time with the chop. And that's one of the things, if you've ever seen Luke Roberts, whether it's been in promotions all across the Midwest, whether it's in Chicago or Kansas City or Metropolis or Little Rock or Paducah, Kentucky, or countless different areas, that's why I cringe anytime anybody takes a chop inside the ring, because I know what it's been like. I mean, again, that's something that I've grown up inside the professional wrestling business. And I'll tell you right now, every time I hear a chop, it doesn't matter what it is, it makes me cringe because I think about some of the wars that I have been in inside the ring.
Yeah, and to
It makes
capitalize.
me cringe because I know Billy Bob's chops. I'm just going to say that it makes me cringe just because of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of give you a little backstory also with an experience I know of Billy Bob. I might have had a chop or two, but I remember when I started training as well. There was like a facility of here in town that was next to a place called Big Texas, but that's where I was training at the time. Your brother was there. It was me and a good buddy of mine who was training at the time. Of course, didn't really make it in the business, but I forgot who we were facing, and we were having to work tag match, and we were going pretty good. And then for no reason at all, this skinny guy with a freaking straw or a cowboy hat and a belt buckle bigger than his freaking head. And half of his weight was because of the belt buckle. A guy by the name of Joseph Kinder, aka JT Shaw, just comes sliding right in the middle of the ring with a chair and decides to hit one of us for no apparent reason. He wasn't even involved in the match. And
Was he a part of the show or?
no, no. See, this isn't a training segment. Okay, we were training, and it was not part of the show. He took upon himself to freaking just come in and just whack somebody. And thank God he didn't hit me because I would have been, he would have been up the river. But anyway, we were all ticked off. Your brother saw it, by the way, Luke, and got in the ring. And he said, "Well, you need a receipt for something stupid that you did." Pulled his shirt over his head, and we were already outside the ring. I was out in the parking lot with this door open, and you heard that ham hock hit that skinny, hollow chest of his, and it only took one hit. And that dude was crying for like 20 minutes. I swear to God. He was crying for 20 minutes, and he had the mark on his hand. He had the mark on his chest for almost a week from that one open hand hard chop. So you don't mess with Billy Bob at all when with that. So
Okay. Hold on. So there was a show in Kirksville, Missouri, and there were short people, so they had to come up with something. So they did a King of Kirksville tournament, and it was in Missouri, so you had to be licensed. And a trainee, as stupid as he was at the time, had his license already. So they threw him in the match. He was going to be basically, putting over Billy Bob. There was only 2 moves in this whole match. The rookie kept doing the double axe handle, and trust me, that story will keep going on and on and on about that. And then 5 chops from Billy Bob that lasted on the chest for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
man.
And guys, you talk about, you talk about the chops, but to give you an idea about Billy Bob was a man. I got to tell you right now, inside the ring, a lot of people, and Ruby, you talked about some of the pictures that are there. Here's a guy, you say, okay, he's a big man, he can throw chops. But here's a man, the agility that Billy Bob had inside the ring was scary. And GQ, I know you've been on the wrong end of it a couple times, but the man could throw a standing sidekick and hit anybody right on the point of the jaw. And I've not seen too many men inside the ring, and I'm not going to lie to the listeners here tonight. There were times when he would be stepping on the scale before an event at 4.25, 450 pounds, and he's throwing side kicks and martial arts kicks, the likes of which a lot of people inside the squared circle haven't seen. And to be able to go out there, and it was one of those. A lot of guys use that old strategy. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to outrun the big guy. I'm going to try to basically make him catch me. That was a scary thing for a lot of guys. People like, oh, I'll outrun him. That was the thing. He didn't get tired. You couldn't outrun him. And when he caught you, it was time for you to understand what professional wrestling was all about. And again, I've had countless matches with him, and I'll tell you, when I sit back and I look at things across the board and in those early days, especially in places like the MVWA, places like CCW, places like RCW back in the day, when I go to these different promotions and I see all of these things going on and seeing how wrestlers are learning their craft, learning how to become better inside the ring, I felt very fortunate that by the time I had the opportunity to be an actual in-ring competitor and I had been there, I was prepared for pretty much everything and anything that could come my way.
Yeah. Yeah, like say your brother was he was yeah, he was scary agile for as big as he was. And he took a lot too, and trust me, he was a fan of the juice too. And I'm not talking about just cracking a watermelon over somebody's head either, and it just happened to run. Yeah, but no, yeah, but yeah, Belly Bob was
You
definitely
juice,
something.
you juice, you juice, everybody juice.
Yeah,
Sorry.
everybody.
We've all heard that story from him, so we know the look right there. So
Yeah. Oh my God, nothing like a good bloodbath. Um, so so in your first match, you talked about it. Now, did you come out as well? Well, what was the first gimmick? Like, what was your first ring name whenever you were in your first match?
Well, it's an interesting story there, Ruby, because when I first wrestled, and there's a handful of wrestlers in the St. Louis area who had that opportunity to be wrestling before. Most people would say you have to be 18 before you can get inside a ring. I remember my first wrestling persona was the name Steve Mercury Morris. And I wasn't that long. I mean, I think you hear about that a lot of times in professional wrestling. You develop a persona and it lasts maybe a cup of coffee, 2 if you're lucky. And and like I said, that lasted for a couple of events. And then I realized something, and like I said, after spending a few months inside the ring, learning what I needed to do, I learned that at the time, and you're going to find this weird considering how I am now, but I kind of had a little attitude problem, I guess would be the best way to put it. And I kind of, back about 6 to 7 months into professional wrestling, decided to become the Techno Kid. And that was a lot more of a real capsulated picture of the 90s. I was a young kid. I was opinionated. I had the long hair. I had everything that was there. But the fact was, at the time, being the Techno Kid, it was one of those, I prided myself on 2 things. 1, being in great cardiovascular shape. And 2 was the idea that I had learned how to wrestle inside ring. And I'm not just talking pro wrestling, I'm talking amateur wrestling. I had the privilege of being an amateur wrestler in high school. I learned by studying a lot of VHS tapes and watching things of some of the great wrestlers like the Nick Bockwinkel's, like the Arn and Gene Anderson, like the Ray the Crippler Stevens, being able to go in and physically dissect a body part inside the ring. And gentlemen, I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people weren't necessarily fond of the Techno Kid, but one thing they'll tell you is that I could take care of what I needed to do inside the squared circle.
Yeah.
So you actually learned chain wrestling when this actually was important. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, GT, that's one of the things that I've always stressed in 30 plus years. When you're inside the squared circle, it's one of those situations where you have to be prepared for everything. And I got to tell you right now, that background I had, and again, I had just a smattering of everything. I had a little bit of Taekwondo, I had a little bit of judo background, I had a little bit of amateur wrestling. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, is the idea of being able to keep a hold on your opponent. I mean, that's one of the things in this day and age. I mean, again, there's a lot of people that can go out and they're aerial superstars. They can fly through the ring. There are brawlers. There's all different types of wrestlers inside the ring. But if you look at professional wrestling across the board, you have the American style. You have the lucha libre style of Mexico. You have that catch-as-catch-can style, the European style of wrestling. You've got more of the, I guess you would say, the strong style in Japan. You've got the Sambo type style of Russia. And that was one of the things I always stress to anybody who gets in the ring. You have to be a student of professional wrestling, because the more complete you are inside the ring, the more likely you're going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. So during your in-ring era, and we're going to get back to some aspects inside the as far as like with wrestling and everything else, in regards to what really needs to be in wrestling, at least on a competitive perspective. But during your in-ring wrestling era of your career, you wrestled with many promotions across the Midwest. Which one did you like wrestling for the most?
Well, Ruby, when you sit down and you look at all these promotions that were there, when I first got into professional wrestling, there weren't a lot of professional wrestling promotions in the St. Louis area. I mean, when you're looking at the late 80s, that was the tail end of the Wrestling at the Chase era. Wrestling at the Chase was pretty much that, and the St. Louis Wrestling Club had pretty much kind of been absorbed into the Vince McMahon corporate empire. And when you sit there and you look at professional wrestling, I got to say, during the early part of my career, I'd have to say probably my two favorite promotions early on in my career were, one would be, actually I'm going to have to say three. Without question to me, MVWA was probably my most fun, just because of the fact that it gave me an opportunity to be me and make connections inside the professional wrestling world. And I'm going to tell you right now, there were so many people that I've met from the MVWA days. I mean, I can go back and talk about Mr. GQ. I can talk about one of the other former guests here on the program, The Beast. I can talk about people like Dynamite Derek Stone, another past guest of the program. People like Ace Steel, like Scrap Iron Adam Pierce, Jinx. There were countless wrestlers that I absolutely, I mean, it was a great time. Stephen Gerthy is another one. FedEx Matt Taylor, Chris Snide. There were countless wrestlers that you could talk about at that point in time. And again, it really gave me a chance to be me. I had two other ones that really kind of popped into my head. And these are some ones I remember, was the idea of having an opportunity to compete at the South Broadway Athletic Club, which I had the opportunity to do on two occasions. I had the opportunity to compete there back in the late 90s, and also my first championship opportunity in CCW against a man by the name, and this one, Ruby, it might be a little before your time, if you can imagine that, but I know GQ's going to remember this name, a man by the name of Viper.
I remember.
And wrestling him
I remember.
And wrestling him for the CCW Heavyweight Championship. Granted, I didn't get the victory, but the opportunity to wrestle for a championship was really, really cool. And I got to tell you, being in professional wrestling in the late 90s, right around the time of the beginning of the Monday Night Wars into that 97, 98 time period, all of it was a really great time, because the idea, I was getting inside the ring, I was making money, I was doing what the professional wrestling, the sport of professional wrestling was designed to do. I was making money. I was, in most cases, getting people fired up about the sport, and I had a blast. But I got to say right now, at this point, looking at the MVWA, a lot of great connections there too. A couple other names too that pop into my head. Tom Simon, longtime friend, referee. I consider him one of my mentors in the world of professional wrestling. And another name that a lot of people have forgotten a lot about, Tim Miller. a man that, and again, this is going to sound weird, but there are certain members of this conversation that learned a lot from being around Tim Miller. And I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to the MVWA, there were a lot of great times that were there. And looking at things now, those things would be great. And also, it was the beginnings of a very long-standing friendship with the voice of Dynamo Pro Wrestling to this very day, Chris Rodell.
Oh yeah. Chris got to start.
That was definitely where Chris started there too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, like
I thought he was going to mention the promotion that he went up to Chicago for and everything, and they ended up not having stuff, and he had to be paid with Beast walking out from the back with 2 things of bread underneath his arms and everything. People were paid with Twinkies, and they were food on the beds in the hotel room and everything. But
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing right now, GQ. I mean, that's one of the things you learn in professional wrestling is the idea. A lot of people in this day and age talk about getting in a car with people you know and traveling and exploring things. I'm going to tell you, I don't remember much of that trip because I actually suffered my first in-ring injury the night before. I was wrestling in a tag team matchup, and I had a gentleman hit me right on the temple. And again, a lot of people know whether you're in MMA, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, whatever, taking a shot to the temple is very scary.
Oh yeah.
And I knew the second I got hit that I had problems. And I will tell you, I spent the bulk of my journey because I was contractually obligated to wrestle in St. Charles that Saturday night and be in Chicago, Illinois that next day. And I spent the bulk of my trip to Chicago with my head pretty much right up against what was left of the window that wasn't rolled down because I thought I was going to be sick. In this day and age, probably was my first actual in-ring competition concussion. Happened the night before, but again, the opportunity to go to Chicago and wrestle with guys like Mark Fabe, guys like Freddie Jacobs, Pretty Boy Floyd, Freddie Jacobs, a lot of great names. And again, a lot of those connections that I made from the MVWA days, I got to say right now, that wouldn't have been for people like my brother getting me into professional wrestling and guys like the management of the MVWA. I definitely wouldn't have learned as much as I did.
Yeah. And sometimes, you suffer injuries and, when you're, a lot of these guys, even back then, they took the booking seriously, especially if they booked on an out-of-town talent coming in. And, man, I couldn't imagine traveling up freaking nearly 300 miles to compete. Nonetheless, maybe over 300, whatever the case may be. But, my God, injuries can be detrimental here, and that's another thing I'm going to be asking you here. Because it ended up being an injury that did end up making you stop competing from inside the ring with the major injury that happened during a match. So was that the injury that caused it, or was there something else that happened in a different match that caused it in your in-ring competitive career?
Well, Ruby, you talked earlier on about a place called Big Texas.
Yep.
And a lot of people have great memories of that particular facility. I'm going to tell you right now, that building has one memory, and it's a very bad memory in my mind. It was back in a time when, and you gentlemen and a lot of the listeners here of the program would remember back when the promotion up in the Northeast, so that make sure we don't get any kind of trademark issues here or copyright issues here, that promotion to the very, very Northeast, they had this deal for several years of running the Thanksgiving Eve tradition.
Yep.
And running an event on Thanksgiving Eve.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The promotion that I was working with at the time had an event on Thanksgiving Eve. And I was inside the ring, and I had a gentleman pick me up. And for those that are familiar, Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, was known in a lot of cases for that fall away slam.
Yeah.
And this guy threw me, and I remember my tailbone and my hips hitting the mat.
Oh.
The only other thing I remember was my tailbone, my hips, and right smack in the middle of my forehead hitting the mat.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how I managed to turn my upper body basically 90 degrees. The adrenaline kept going. I finished the match, did everything that needed to be done. I got up the next morning, Thanksgiving Day. At the time, I had just gotten to a point where I was with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and in the process of things, I had to have help eating Thanksgiving dinner. That's how bad my back was messed up.
Oh.
And I remember going the day after on that Friday. And we all know how busy a day after Thanksgiving is.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I can tell you right now, it was the scariest day of my life because I was in an MRI tube, and the doctor was amazed that I had not broken my back.
Oh, my God.
And at that point, I really took a look at professional wrestling, and I'm like, am I cut out for this? And kind of ironically, Ruby, as we all know in professional wrestling, you've always got to change. You've always got to be able to adapt. And I kind of got very fortunate that even though I had been injured, it kind of gave me that natural progression to the next phase of my career.
Yep. So, yeah. So with that being said, I mean, knowing that your career was over, I mean, were you able to handle the transition? I mean, because sometimes us as competitors, if we come into a situation like that, like what you did, some don't handle it as well because they're like, well, I really want to be in the ring and I'm going to do it anyway. But I mean, as far as handling your next phase, I mean, how did you take it? And then what did you end up doing next after whenever your competitive side of your wrestling career was done?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and Ruby, you know very well, and GQ, you do as well. Whenever something comes up to where you get somebody to tell you your career's done, it's heartbreaking. And I mean, When I look at it, I had been an in-ring competitor for 95, so you'd be looking probably about 3 years. You'd look at my involvement for a better part of a decade, and I'm like, okay. I spent a lot of the holidays bummed out because I knew getting inside the ring wasn't going to happen. And I did manage to spend some time kind of dabbling in a wide variety of things. I had an opportunity to, after getting hurt, got to manage the tag team known as Brute Force.
Yep.
Had a pretty solid time with them. Really wish they would have brought the MBWA Tag Championship to me as a part of my managerial time, but wasn't meant to be.
But you know, Rich Davis did hold the tag titles when he was managed by Matt Maniac. I'm just going to say that, and I'm just going to let it go now.
Oh, I see where you're trying to take this, GQ. I see where you're trying to take it. But when you sit there and you look at it, having that opportunity of being a manager for a time really got me to start seeing there were other things. And I spent several years, and actually it was kind of a blessing too. Not only am I getting the opportunity to do commentary, not only am I getting a chance to learn more about watching professional wrestlers get in the ring and compete and see what the holes in their game are. It was kind of ironic because as one door closed, I had an opportunity to go through, and I take this piece of advice that I got from Mick Foley's book, Have a Nice Day, and by the man known as Dominic DeNucci.
Yep.
And it had been mentioned that 99% of professional wrestlers never make a living from professional wrestling. And I was lucky in the event that I got to spend the opportunity to spend that 4 to 5 years between about 98 and about 2003, just kind of learning all different sorts of things and learning things outside of the wrestling ring as well. So, I mean, again, having the opportunity to commentate, to look at wrestlers and see where the holes in their game are, to see how can they make themselves better, give them guidance to different things that they can do, and share that knowledge that I had. That was really a great thing for me, because I was still able to stay involved with the sport that I loved. And even though I couldn't be in a ring, I still was able to be involved. And that was the thing that really kind of helped me through things.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, as far as, still being involved in the business and, taking that in stride and, and just taking, handling the situation, because, knowing how to handle that if you come into a situation, because every guy, at least I would think, they would want to end their competitive career on their terms, not on terms forced by some other force of nature, whether it be injury, God forbid death. But, you don't want to, go down that avenue, because you just want to end it on what you would like to end it on. So, but it's good that you do that, though. And that's awesome that, you kept pushing. But let's go ahead and look into another venture in the business that you had, becoming an in-ring trainer for wrestlers coming in through the Mid-America Extreme promotion that was, just on the other side of the river here in St. Louis. So you had some guys that you've trained, that you brought up through, that came into the promotion. Now, when you were training, what do you feel is the most important attribute to teach somebody getting into the business and trying to make a worthwhile, notable career for themselves, for wrestling?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that when it comes to professional wrestling, the idea of me actually getting to train wrestlers, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, almost happened by accident. I'm not going to lie to you. It was late 2003, early 2004. And I heard through the wonderful world of social media that a very good mutual friend of all of ours, a man by the name of Black Glove Butch Fletcher, was going to make the jump from longtime mainstay manager here in the St. Louis area to the promoter. And had the opportunity, I went by and just totally, and again, it was late 2003. I had been married for about 2 years. I had just been at that point, I was really kind of wondering, is wrestling still going to be a part of my life now that I'm married, now that I'm wanting to start a family? Is this going to be my avenue? And I literally drove 6 blocks, and I see this board outside of the Max Training School, the Mid-America Extreme Pro Wrestling, and it has this arrow drawn to this great big old school building. And I walk in, and I sit down and I talk with Butch Fletcher, and I don't know if it was fate or if it was case, but happened to talk to me. He's like, well, come back and let's talk about some things. Like, okay, that's great and well and good. The next time I came back, which a few days later, was the opportunity to have a core group of trainers at the time. And being able to sit there, and you gentlemen both know very well, the time of being in Mid-America Extreme was to me was a really great opportunity, because it wasn't just one trainer teaching you one particular style or teaching you how they would do things. We had 3 trainers. We had a gentleman by the name of Harsh, that a lot of people here in the St. Louis area may not be familiar with, was a man who could brawl like nobody's business, 6'6", just a big mountain of a man, but the man could amateur wrestle. He had that multiple avenue of doing things. Then you had Jeremy Lightfoot, a man who could fly around the ring and bring that aerial offense but was also very capable inside the ring.
Yeah.
Then they were sitting there, they were looking at it and going, well, what can Luke Roberts bring to the table? And basically it was calling back to that amateur style that I had learned all those years ago. And to be able to sit there and teach all three of these different components of professional wrestling. And the big thing is talking about, how do you conduct yourself? How do you go about getting professional wrestling promoters to look at you? How do you put together video footage to send to promotions? How do you do the idiosyncrasies to move forward in the world of professional wrestling? And we talked earlier about a lot of great people who had come through back when I was an in-ring competitor. But Mid-America Extreme had a lot of good wrestlers that came through too. A lot of them that are still around professional wrestling to this day. You talk about wrestlers like, let's see here, Corey Tillman. You talk about a man who would later go on to great success is Casey Carrington. You talk about people like Justin the Iceman Wade. You talk about Trent Stone. You talk about Crispy Tupac. You talk about, I'm just starting to the names. I mean, there's so many names that came through Mid-America Extreme, and it was the idea of being able. It was almost like I had found that calling, that this is what I'm here to do. This is where I'm to give my knowledge of what I've been able to do for the past 15 years. And to be around Mid-America Extreme, they weren't around long. They were around about a year. But I'm going to tell you right now, when you go back and you look at the names that stepped inside that ring, people, like I've already mentioned, people like the Angel of Light, Izzy Blackwell. You talk about the Archtown Criminals. You talk about Reed Rain. You talk about Volatile Curtis Wild. You talk about Chris Sin. You talk about countless people.
We even had Mischief on the first show on that too.
That is true. I mean, again, there were so many wrestlers that came through the doors at Max. And, I mean, again, when you sit there and look at it, just the names of people who've come through, I mean, it really makes me feel good to know that even today, 15 years later, there are wrestlers that are still plying their trade inside the squared circle. And to me, that was definitely one of the things that I would take from that time period, was the idea of seeing wrestlers put the whole package together and go on to great things.
Yeah, totally awesome. And after you got done with training, you started ring announcing for the Ultimate Wrestling Alliance. Of course, also another promotion in Illinois, not too far away from where Max was in late 2005, because Max had shut down. So with you being a ring announcer, I mean, tell us how vital of a role a ring announcer plays, getting everything set up before the doors open for a show, and what energy level the ring announcer must maintain throughout the entire event from beginning to end.
Well, I got to tell you right now that one of the things that a lot of fans, a lot of people who follow professional wrestling, they see all the men and women who get inside the ring, and they see them putting themselves on the line every time they get in the ring. But there are a lot of people who don't get the credit they deserve. One of them, and I'm going to kind of take some creative liberty here for a minute,
sure,
is referees.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, there have been so many referees that have gone out there, and I got to tell you right now, that have been part of some of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Referees like, I already mentioned Tom Simon earlier, a man who I got to tell you right now, I really truly think belongs in the Midwest Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame, and that's the late Bama Bodine.
Yep.
Bama Bodine was 5'0", might have weighed 100 pounds.
Yeah.
But when you got inside that squared circle, Bama Bodine let you know how it was.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody pushed Bama Bodine. You talk about referees like Doug Michaels, member of the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
You talk about referees back in their day, like Ed Smith, a man who had a long storied history here in the St. Louis area. You look at Little Dynamite Tony Costa. And then you look at things nowadays. You look at referees, again, ones that I know of. When you talk about referees, you talk about referees like Kurt Stiles, had a very successful tenure inside as a referee. Eric Davis. You talk about referees like Scott Murphy. You talk about referees like Michael Crace. Another man, I got to tell you right now, when it comes down to it, Michael Crace is one of those referees that I'm just amazed at. I mean, he always seemed to have just that knack for being in the right match at the right time. And he's a man that always had my respect. I even look today, there's a lot of good officials throughout the area right now. Two of them, I've got to say, that I feel very close to. Actually, I got to say three of them. One of them that really never got as much credit on a lot of avenues was Patrick Hook. I look at referees today like Jay King. I look at referees like Scott Ramsey in Dynamo Pro Wrestling. I even look at a man who might be a little bit of kind of a heartfelt thing here. One of the last men I've had the opportunity to help guide inside the ring, that being H.D. Daniels at Dynamo Pro Wrestling. Referees are one of those where they've got to keep law and order. They've got to know what's going on. And I've seen countless referees. You talked about it earlier, Ruby, when fans try to attack or try to get in the ring. A lot of times that referee is that last line of defense.
Yep. Absolutely.
And when you look at it, that again, all those men, and there are a lot of others. I mean, I could, again, taking 33 years in professional wrestling, I could go on for hours. Mm-hmm. But referees and announcers both are people that have to be aware of so many things. And when it comes to being an announcer, I mean, it's a hard job to do. Like, oh, you get to hold a microphone, this, that, and the whatnot. No. It's one of those where you got to keep that energy. You got to keep those fans involved and engaged. I mean, I look at it when you've got announcers like Chris Rodell. I mean, here's a guy who spent several years outside of the professional wrestling world and comes back to be one of the key voices of professional wrestling. I look at Ben Simon, another man that's been inside Dynamo Pro Wrestling for many events. A lot of things with Missouri Wrestling Revival and things along the line. I look at announcers back in the day, the Herb Simmons and the Ed Smiths. I will tell you this, there's one man, and I know he's probably watching on the social media because that's his thing to do, and he's probably going to sit there, and I'll probably never hear the end of it tomorrow when I actually go into the office. But one that really kind of registers with me is my broadcast colleague for Dynamo Pro commentary, Dynamo Pro video through DVD and through YouTube. Is I'm going to have to think about this here for minutes. I make sure I don't mess it up. The man who claims he's the best dressed announcer in St. Louis professional wrestling history, Drake Lee. And I'm going to tell you this right now. A lot of people sit there and they poke jabs at him and they make fun of him because he has to have his hair perfect. He has to have the outstanding jackets and things along the line. One thing a lot of people don't know is this man picks up professional wrestling like a sponge. And at 21 years of age, he can sit there and he could talk about wrestling from the 70s and 80s, and he's starting to learn different styles of wrestling. He's learning not only different styles here in the country, but he's learning different styles outside of the country. And I'm going to tell you right now, an announcer, a referee, all those support people, a lot of pro wrestling fans don't even begin to look at those people. But they're the ones, a lot of times, that really deserve the thank you. Because there's a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of referees who've gone out there, they've gotten hurt as a referee, never competed inside a ring, and they're kind of chucked aside. But as you said, Ruby, when it comes down to it, referees and announcers and all those people, everybody that's involved with professional wrestling that knows what it takes, the miles on the road, the wear and tear on your body, all those, the training, the dieting, all those things, the working out to make sure they're there. It's one of those where it's everybody is on board. And I got to tell you right now, I have to say a thank you to all those men and women who I've had the privilege of sharing a microphone or a ring with, because again, they're the reason why I still do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like I said, I mean, because the reason why, I kind of focus in on the ring announcer, and it's not just, making sure someone's names are pronounced right, which sometimes it doesn't happen and it doesn't always go the way it does, where it's supposed to go. But, you got to know exactly, the format of the entire event. And they have got, they got to make sure that the cards are ready and everything else. Same thing with the referees. I mean, they're going to have multiple matches throughout the entire night. They got to remember what's going on inside. And, which of course, after from announcing, you go to you morphed into being into a referee, with I guess roughly around 8 different promotions where you have officiated for. So what I want to know is what was the most, because you mentioned that sometimes you got to be in that line of defense. The referee does, because you don't know who may be coming into the ring or something that may be happening in the crowd. So following that, what was the most insane or OMG moment match that you were a part of in all the time that you were a referee?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a spin here. I got to tell you right now, not only you talk about with announcers too, they also have to be prepared if you've got people from the press, you've got people from radio, television, whatever. They've got to be on top of it too, not just the matches. But there have been some definite moments. I can remember one in Dynamo Pro that registers with me. I had just made the transition back into being voice of Dynamo Pro Wrestling several years ago at a place called the Sports Academy in Glen Carbon, Illinois. Yeah. And this was a true statement here, and if he's watching, he's probably going to mention it on the Facebook feed in just a few seconds. My broadcast partner, Chris Rodell, it was his first night with the promotion.
Yeah.
And I'm announcing, getting things taken care of. I'm sitting at the announce table. Chris had taken care of what was there. And the fans were getting fired up. They were having a good time. And there was this gentleman in the crowd. And one thing that Dynamo Pro Wrestling prides itself on is having good security and their guardrails.
Yep.
I mean, their guardrails are point. You're not designed to get over that guardrail.
Right.
And out of the corner of my eye, I just happened to nudge Chris. I didn't even know what was going on. I just nudged him with my elbow. And in the process of him, again, not even thinking about it, there was this very large gentleman. I want to say he's probably 6'6", 6'7". Easy.
Mm.
Man, flat foot jumps the guardrail.
Wow.
While a match is going on.
Oh.
And again, I don't know why it happened, but just that nudge was enough to where I nudged Chris on accident. It gave him just enough to turn and see this guy jump the guardrail. And if anybody's ever met Chris Rodell, he's not one of the smallest guys in the world.
Right.
But I have to say this. Within 2 seconds, Chris was already there between that man and the ring.
Man.
And made sure that he wasn't going to get into the ring, because the match that was taking place, I would have been very fearful of what happened if that man would have gotten any farther. Another moment was, I remember a gentleman, this was probably 15 years ago, a man by the name of Average Joe.
Yeah.
And he was taking on a man by the name of Nick Sage.
Mm.
And they were wrestling, they were competing. And out of the corner of my eye, because I was sitting at ringside during this matchup, there was this young man who had slid under a table, over the guardrail, had come in, and as the man was trying to suplex somebody, speared the guy with the suplex.
Oh.
And all I remember was looking at what was there, and the guys that were in the match, the gentlemen that were competing in the match, actually managed to hold this guy in place until security could pull him out. I mean, I've seen, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've seen a lot of things that have happened. Another one that pops into my head, two more. I know the listeners are going to enjoy these because these are some Dynamo Pro stories here. There was a match that took place Dynamo Pro Wrestling at Off Broadway. It was between Dirty Jake Durden and Outcast.
Yeah.
It was a hardcore match. And we all know firsthand that in this day and age, you've got chairs and tables and ladders and street signs and you name it, you got it. And I've known Outcast for many years. Outcast is a tough, tough guy. They brought out a table. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not going to bode well. Then I looked at this table. This table kind of had that marble finish.
Oh, no.
That we remember, the ones that are quite...
Right.
They had not once, I think it was 3 times. I think 2 of them were off the top rope and 1 was off of a ladder. Table didn't move.
God.
And just seeing both of these men being able to keep going at it was there. And I do have to share the one other. Probably one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. The storied rivalry between Dirty Jake Durden and Triple Crown champion, the King of Chaos, Ricky Cruz.
Wow.
And one night they were fighting inside the ring. This was at the Stratford Bar and Grill. Rodell and I are doing commentary at ringside. And these 2 men just had that sheer dislike for one another. And we're basically trying to help security get fans out of the way. And all I hear is boom. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe they had done something where they had gone into the bar or whatever. And these 2 men had put a body-sized hole in a wall. And I'm sitting there, okay.
For the record, though, Stratford had crappy walls to begin with. I'm just saying. But,
yeah.
Right, but again, you still look at it from the point of view, though. You've got Dirty Jake Durden, who, if I'm not mistaken, and my memory is not what it used to be, who I believe at the time was about 270. And you have Ricky Cruz, who I believe was, I want to say, probably 240, 250. Still, 500 plus pounds on a wall. I mean, it was scary. I mean, there are so many stories about seeing just the things that have taken place inside the ring. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, if you get an opportunity to see it, I mean, I've seen some really crazy things over the course of time. And like I said, it's, again, just comes with the territory in the world of pro wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you mentioned the great matches here, or at least crazy matches, you know, during your stint as a referee, what match would you consider to be the best match you witnessed as a referee? Like, what, you know, the best match that you officiated between the wrestlers being the best competitors of the match?
Wow. Well,
if you can.
I mean, again, being around wrestling as long as I have, I got to tell you, there's a couple of them that really stand out to me. The first one that really stands out to me, and I'm not going to fib, I wasn't a referee in that particular case, but I was able to be at ringside for the match as an announcer.
Yeah. Was
back in 2012 when the NWA World Heavyweight Championship makes its way back to St. Louis. And Dynamo Pro Wrestling, through a wide variety of different avenues, including I believe it was the late TNT Kenny Garrett, TNT Kenny G, along with Dynamo Pro Management, along with the National Wrestling Alliance at the time, was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Scrap Iron Adam Pearce taking on the NWA National Heavyweight Champion at the time, the Tokyo Monster Kahagas.
Yep.
And even though I wasn't a referee in that matchup, again, being there with all that kind of stuff going on, it was just a phenomenal in-ring matchup. Another one that pops into my head, sticking with Adam Pearce, because again, I don't think that Adam Pearce gets nearly enough credit for what he's done inside the ring. A couple months later, he was in the ring with the King of Chaos, Ricky Cruz. Seeing wrestlers like an opportunity refereeing of Greg Valentine versus Cowboy Bob Orton in Belleville, Illinois.
Was that the cage match?
Yes, sir. You're knowing exactly what match I'm talking about. Match was nothing short of great, because you have two WWE Hall of Famers that were in the ring. Had the opportunity to see a couple people familiar with by today's standards, Jordan Grace and Santana Garrett inside Dynamo Pro. Had an opportunity, matches that I would say were really, really there. One, a name that a lot of people wouldn't be familiar with, was Nightmare Nick Tyson taking on Alex Shelley. Phenomenal matchup. Had one, other ones pop in my head, was Motor City Machine Guns against Nick Tyson and Dingo. That's another man who I really feel should have a spot in the Midwest Independent Hall of Fame, is Dingo. I've never seen, in all the years I've been around pro wrestling, he was a man that would go out there and could wrestle anybody. And he would go out there and he would leave it all in the ring. And he's another one of those. And there's a lot of wrestlers that deserve there, but he's another one. If Pete Madden is there, I think that hopefully somewhere down the road, somebody like Dingo would be acknowledged that way. But like I said, guys, there are so many great matches that have been. I mean, again, I could sit here and talk for hours on the different competitors who've come through St. Louis in some form or another. And again, just being in the ring, a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, weren't you nervous?" I'm like, no. Once you're inside that ring, those nerves have got to go. You can't be nervous. You've got to be the official. You've got to be the one in there that's taking care of things. And I'll tell you right now, after 33 plus years, I feel very fortunate that I still got a lot of things of video footage, because there were a lot of great matches that have taken place here in St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, with your time in Dynamo, I think in 2014, you moved to the role as media relations director with them. Explain to us what the duties and responsibilities that come with the role, and how important it plays into promoting each show that they run.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Ruby. In 2014, I was really, for about the third time here, I was considering retiring from professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And then it just happened that TNT Kenny G had suffered a stroke.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted to do something to help out the American Heart Association. And literally my discussion into becoming the media relations director with Dynamo Pro Wrestling, and very few people know this. I think I've only shared this story with a couple of people over the course of my career. My entire idea, or my entire interview, I guess, to be a media relations director was, okay, Luke, you've gone to college. You've been around wrestling for 20-some years. You know how to talk on a microphone. Do you want to go do interviews? That was about all of my formal interview that I got when it came to taking the position. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it was going. Just the idea of over the course of the past 6 years, just the people that I've gotten to meet, the interviews I've gotten to do. I remember for that Stroke Ain't No Joke event, we had 4 interviews in one day. And I'm not talking, oh, it's podcast or this. No. We had interviews with, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4 different radio stations in the span of 10 hours.
Oh, man.
To give you an idea, that particular day, and I'm not going to lie to the listeners of the show, that's one thing I've always been respectful of people. I left my home just outside of Alton, Illinois at the time at 7 a.m. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I was at 1380 a.m. for our first interview. I went from there, I drove back to WBGZ 107.1, 94.3 The Mix, and 1570 AM. I got to make sure I get all their call signs here for an interview at 10:30. Get back in the car, drive to KCFV 89.5 The Wave over at Flow Valley at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And then finish up the evening with Joe Roderick, Larry Nickel, my good friend Larry Nickel, Andy Hanselman, on 590, or his high time was at 920, to finish the evening up. But since that point happened and everything went on, the idea of media relations really, you get a lot of people who have promoters, but you don't get a lot of people who can talk about the events and have that knowledge of the events and knowledge of the wrestlers. And I'm going to tell you right now, in the early days of being media relations director, and hopefully he's listening here tonight on the program, was a gentleman who a lot of people in St. Louis have talked to and know him, and that's Patrick Brandmeier.
Yeah.
Patrick knows a ton about it, and what I don't remember, and I have a pretty good memory, but what I couldn't remember, I could go, hey, Patrick, do you remember this? And he was able to give me that information. And as time has gone on, it is just kind of, especially in this day and age, with everything that's going on right now, the idea of where, if you would have told me 6 years ago that I would have had the opportunity to be interviewed by Tim Mazzell on Fox 2 News, or the opportunity to sit down and talk professional wrestling with Rennie Knott from KSDK, or the countless newspapers, or in this day and age, there's a lot of great podcasts, and having that network of podcasts all across the country. I mean, you were talking about it earlier on. There are countless people from different podcasts all across this country that know of Dynamo Pro because of what's there and because of the work that was done. And I mean, when you sit down and look at it, professional wrestling, you talk about the promoter and the promoter going out and putting out the posters and talking to sponsors and things like that. But in the course of my time in media relations, and I have to give my props to the media department with Dynamo Pro, is the idea of where the wrestlers, the announcers, everybody knows what's going on in Dynamo Pro. And the opportunity to come onto programs like this one here tonight, and countless others throughout the country, and talk about Dynamo Pro and be able to let people know what it is. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like in the old days of the idea of where you would get people who could do interviews, and the idea of that 3 to 5 minutes of being able to talk to somebody is all you're going to get to be aware of what's going on. And just the opportunity of being around and talking to people about pro wrestling. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people say it's sports entertainment. I beg to differ with you. To me, it is still the sport of professional wrestling. And if I can go out there, share my knowledge, and help people see what's going on with Dynamo Pro Wrestling, I got to tell you right now, then I'm doing my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that's a good. I mean, that's a good mindset to have when you're approaching the business like this. To me, I mean, anybody could do sports entertainment. There could be different forms of sports entertainment, but this is professional wrestling, and to me, you have to be a professional to conduct yourself in a way. If you're part of a promotion like that, you have to carry yourself out, even inside and outside the ring, especially when you're on the day of an event, and and set that bar and make sure that whatever event that you're a part of that day, just make sure that you carry yourself well, and make sure you leave yourself with a good memory with everybody that you encounter that day, especially at the show with the fans, whoever that's part of it. So, I mean, you've had many names, like you said, in the business. I mean, I know you work with so many names here, and the list of names that you provided to me. I mean, a lot of the names that are, with, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley. We're talking about everything with the names from GCW. With Mischief, Daisy Hayes, Matt Seidel. Like I say, you mentioned Marvelous Mitch Ryder, which Godspeed. And may he rest in peace. I believe he just passed away today. I believe you mentioned earlier. And then you get like WWE Hall of Famers, Harley Race, Hacksaw Butch Reed, Iceman, world class guys, Iceman Keem Parsons, Gentleman Chris Adams, and then other guys, Unbreakable, Michael Belgian, Dingo you mentioned, even Dwarf, the Puppet, the Cycle Dwarf, Little Kato, and of course countless others, including like Sami Zayn and Cesaro, which of course back then is El Generico and Claudio Castagnoli, and of course with Ruby Riott or Heidi Lovelace. Is there any?
Forgot King Mabel though.
King Mabel.
That is true. That was one of those that I didn't get that you have on me there, GQ. You have on me there. But you know something, Ruby? I'm gonna tell you right now. You mentioned the name of a gentleman who passed away a little more than a year ago. Man by the name, and a lot of people call him Harley Race, call him King Harley Race. I remember him growing up as Handsome Harley Race.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people were from the St. Louis area. I remember watching, and there's not a lot of things here, but hearing the stories of him and Pretty Boy Larry Hennig back from the days of the AWA.
Yeah.
And he was at an event back, and I think both of you remember it's called Solid Gold.
Yeah.
For the MBWA.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to be in a street fight. And I'm not going to lie to you, gentlemen, I was 19 years old, and I was panicked. I didn't know, was I going to walk out of there that night okay? Was I going to have use of all of my appendages? Was I going to have use of my body? Was I going to be able to walk out? And I was in the locker room kind of pacing up and down, and Harley comes up to me. He's like, "What's the matter, kid?" I'm like, "I got a fight tonight, and I'm a little nervous." And one of the great pieces of knowledge he passed to me, you signed up for this. The only way to go at it, go out there, leave it out there. You get hurt, you deal about it tomorrow.
Right.
And you went out there and took care of that. And I mean, again, having the opportunity to be, and even now, at 33 years in professional wrestling, having an opportunity to still travel all across this country. And in the last few years, having the opportunity to be in contact with a lot of different organizations. And again, I feel very fortunate to talk to promotions like WCWC out of the Pacific Northwest, talk with promotions FML out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, to talk with groups like RAW out of Kansas City, to talk with promotions like ASWA and Mid-Ohio Wrestling out in the Ohio area. the opportunity to talk with people through those avenues. And one of the things and I know GQ, you and I are going to be talking about this soon. One of the big things about professional wrestling is that brotherhood, the idea of being on the road and competing night in, night out. And a couple years ago, being media relations director, and again, I might get in a little bit of trouble here, but I said, since we're being on the level with everybody here tonight on the program, about 2.5, 3 years ago, I sat down, and for years, I had 3 people really push me in regards to a great organization called the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Yep.
One of them was the late TNT Kenny G.
Yep.
The second, my good friend Tom Simon. And the third one is going to be one that a lot of people don't know. And that's a friend of mine by the name of Dr. Drew Abenhouse.
Yeah, yeah.
And being a part of the Dynamo Pro Media team, being Dynamo Pro Media Relations Director, being a part of the Cauliflower Alley Club, having the opportunity to come in contact with so many great wrestlers, true story, had an opportunity to sit down and talk with, in an interview form, for almost 45 minutes with the current president of the Cauliflower Alley Club, B. Brian Blair. Without things like the Cauliflower Alley Club, I wouldn't have the opportunity to talk with people that I consider to be the people that I looked up to growing up. One of them that I got a chance to talk to was Kevin Sullivan. Having the opportunity with all these great men and women who said, when you go out in the professional wrestling world, you have to have the opportunity to go out and give that respect to those that have come before you. And again, just having that opportunity, I'm going to tell you guys, if something were to happen today and I were to say that I couldn't be a part of pro wrestling anymore, I would carry all of those memories for all the rest of my days. Because for the better part of, if you count being younger, for almost 40 years, I've gotten the opportunity to watch, be involved, and enjoy the sport of professional wrestling. And like I said, gentlemen, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
No, yeah, me either, man. And hopefully, I mean, the CAC would be definitely something I would love to find a way to get down there. And of course, I of course have to be the process getting to be the member. And of course, GQ knows this more than anything about getting getting a pushback this year due to this whole COVID scare. Twice, yeah, and it's horrible. And we just have to look forward to 2021 because I mean this mess has got to be cleaned up by then. You would think so. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of great memories, and hopefully if I get down to a convention like that, I know I'm going to have a lot more memories like that. I mean, shoot, yeah, GQ, if you and I ever get down to a convention together, man, how cool would it be? We take the show on the road and find a way to interview people. That'd be pretty cool if we ever did something like that. Just saying. I mean,
I'll be too busy going all over the place and all that. I'm going to try and go hang out with Godfather. I'm just saying.
Yeah, stop playing the penny slots and go out and live a little, will you? Because you know that's a whole facade. He goes that he hopes to he wants to see how far $5 could carry him here in Vegas. So so we're gonna go ahead and So whenever you're not involved in wrestling, what is Luke Roberts doing to occupy his time?
Well, Ruby, I'm going to tell you right now, this has really been a weird time. Like I said,
yeah.
I've still been active. I've still been taking part in interviews. I've still been contacting people. I feel very fortunate that the next evolution of Luke Roberts is jumping into the world of the podcast. And there's a lot of great programs just like this one right here that have asked me for advice, for pointers, for contact information, things like that really want to let fans know what's going on with pro wrestling. And I'm not going to lie, guys, even in the world of COVID-19, where right now the only thing we have is we have AEW, we've got WWE, and for those that have the opportunity to catch New Japan World or some of these different streaming services like Independent Wrestling TV or New Japan World or Honor Club or MLW streaming service or the GWN or whatever, that's basically what I've been trying to do, is trying to get people in know. But I'm gonna let people know. I actually managed for the first time in almost a year. I actually broke down this week, and if you ever get a chance, you need to ask Chris Rodell, because I'm one of those that loves to be in my office as much as I possibly can. I actually took 3 consecutive days off this week. The first time I've done that in probably at least a year.
Oh, yeah.
And had the opportunity. I spent, let's see, I got an opportunity, even though you can't really go out and really interact with people, had an opportunity. I got to travel for about 3-4 hours in the car just to go drive around, kind of see things of my past. I'm not going to lie, instead of trying to do stuff in my office today, which I could have gone back in the office today, but I made sure to take my third day off. Spent a pretty good amount of time playing PlayStation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna fib to anybody. Having the opportunity of firing up the PlayStation and playing some video games are definitely there. Like I said, I know that right now, and gentlemen, I'm just gonna throw this at you. And I know you guys. This is episode 10, and I feel really fortunate. When you look at some of the guests that you've had on the program, like Bill Alfonso, like you've had the Searcher and Miss Hyde, you've had the Beast, you've had Beachbody Ryan Ash, the countless other guests, the Butcher Damian Blade, you've had countless other people here. Like I said, right now it's a unique time in the world of professional wrestling, and I just look at it from a point of view that being able to see things that are going on right now, it's definitely going to be, I mean, to me, I think it's going to be a while before we even think about seeing professional wrestling back in the local area. And that's one of the big things to me. And I want to say to all the fans watching the program, whether on YouTube or on Facebook Live here tonight, please do professional wrestling the favor. Stay involved. Stay watching what's going on. Try to stay interested. Try to stay the course. Because once we get through this COVID-19 pandemic, I'm going to tell you right now, there are, and GQ, Ruby, I think you would agree with me, all the way through things. When it comes down to it, once we manage to find a way to get through this pandemic, I think we're going to see a resurgence of professional wrestling, the likes of which we have never seen before. I think there are going to be so many men and women who are going to want to get in the ring, who've not been able to compete in some cases. And I don't dare want to think about this, but there's going to be some individuals who've not been able to compete potentially for a year.
Yeah.
And being able to get back inside the squared circle and be able to compete. I mean, it's one of the, I really feel that in the next few months, once we get through this, make sure there's a lot of great promotions. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you look at professional wrestling, and I have my own my own statement here with Dynamo Pro Wrestling. But there are so many talented men and women who want to go out there and make a name for themselves. And once we get through this, I think the wrestling scene, not just here in St. Louis, but around the country and around the world, is going to explode. I really do.
Yeah, and I hope you're right. I mean, because there's a lot of guys that are itching, and there's been some other there have been some promotions in Illinois that have had shows, are going to have shows.
Couple happened in Indiana too recently.
Yeah, Indiana too. But there is going to be but they're all going to be, at least the ones I know of, are going to be outdoors. I think Glory Pro, had theirs, or they're going to have theirs. And then, of course, WPW, World Powerhouse Wrestling in Collinsville on September 12th, they're going to be having an outdoor show here, too. Because, they don't want everybody inside of a building. And, of course, taking precautions as necessary. Whether, and it's going to be up to the wrestlers if they feel like they want to compete or not, even though they still have the itch. And they're going to have to make that judgment call, because even me and my wife were talking about this. If you could go out, if there's still, with a warning sign of this pandemic going on, you're going to have to make that decision and make that call that, hey, do you want to go out and take the risk, or do you feel safe enough? So it's just all a matter, if you keep your distance, and, to be honest, guys, this whole thing, but the social distancing, I've never really known the people to be right up against me, people need to keep their distance anyway, but that's just how I am, throw your arms out and start helicoptering, spinning in one of the, if I hit you, you're too close.
So you already know I don't want people around me anyway either. So, that's how I am already been.
Well, avoid the crowds, GQ. I'm sure they've already done the effort to avoid you, so it's okay. So we're so we got about a couple other things here for you, but one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about is this, because you're talking about guys coming back, but we're going to talk about mainstream. The companies in the southeast, companies up in the northeast, companies in the Midwest, around Ohio and Tennessee and all that. I won't mention the names, but if there's anything that you can change about today's wrestling promotions on the mainstream scene, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough question. To me right now, I think that when you look at professional wrestling on the mainstream level, you had made reference to the comment earlier on in the program, Ruby, about being able to actually watch an episode of a Monday night program or a Friday night program.
Yeah.
And they're 2 to 3 hours in length, and you can watch it in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I've always been of the mindset that when it comes down to it, the name on the marquee, and again, this might be a little bit of an old saying, but the name on the marquee says professional wrestling. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I sit down and I look at things, to me, things that really pique my interest when it comes to professional wrestling, and we can mention it, in the idea, you look at groups like the AEWs. You look at the groups like the NXTs. You look at the New Japans. You look at these organizations where, when it comes down to it, they're putting the wrestling first. And that's one of the things. There are wrestlers who are loud, they're opinionated, they're brash, they're bold, they're colorful. They have all these things, these characteristics with them. But when it comes down to it, I dare say a wrestling purist in the idea for me, and I might be a select niche of the professional wrestling world, but give me the in-ring competition. Give me the wrestlers going out there plying their trade inside the squared circle. That's the thing that I really wish I could see a lot more of inside the ring. And there are a lot of great promotions in the St. Louis area. There are a lot of great promotions in the Midwest. There are a lot of great promotions on this planet as a whole that can go out there and give you great in-ring action. And that's the one thing, to me, I would be the idea of give me more matches. Give me more wrestlers that are going out there and plying their trade, because that's what it is. It's professional wrestling.
Yeah, I would imagine so, because it seems like, and I'll take even with an ideal from Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, it doesn't feel as organic as what it should have been, or what it is, or what it should be. Okay, it almost feels like it's going through the motions. We all, we all see the whole air shots and everything else, even before everybody was afraid of touching one another when this pandemic came around. I mean, you can fit an infant, between the contacts of a slap or a punch, and it's, it's kind of, it's just ridiculous. But the thing is that, I mean, I would think, stick more to wrestling. There's too much of a storyline. I mean, guys want to be entertained and everything else, and some of these companies have too many programs, but then there's too much dialogue. If you were to just cut down your dialogue, you wouldn't have as many programs, so you could feature more guys on your program. I mean, that's all I'm saying. And I think that's something with me that I want to stick with, because, like I said, I'm more of a fan of professional wrestling. If I want to see a soap opera, I sit at home in the middle of the day eating bonbons and not bother working, and I can cry a river before anybody comes home, if I wanted to watch a soap opera. But, that's just me. So our last thing that we usually like to hit on with some guys here, what are some memorable road stories in the wrestling business that you can share that are funny or that have stuck with you for one reason or another?
Okay, I figured this was coming. 30 plus years. I've got some good ones. First one that pops into my head, and this was many years ago. This was, oh man, I can't even say how many years ago. But as I said earlier, I've trained a lot of referees, and again, I'm very thankful for all those men and women who've gone and been phenomenal inside the professional wrestling ring. But I was at an event in Greenville, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And a matter of fact, Mr. GQ was there.
Uh-oh.
And we were sitting there, and you know how guys will joke around and carry on and whatnot. Well, I was sitting there, and I was still, as a referee, I was still pretty flexible. I was still pretty much in shape. And I was joking around, and one of my colleagues decided that he was going to throw a front kick. Yeah. And he went to throw the front kick as a referee, and all you hear is a loud rip.
Yeah.
And needless to say, this was a time period. This was about an hour and a half before the event, and because of the fact that he had ripped his officiating pants, I remember the hour-long car ride trying to find a pair of pants before the event began. I had that. I remember, and GQ talked about it a little early on, one of the few things I do remember from years and years ago when I was an in-ring competitor, I went and did an event in Chicago, and I had a huge headache, probably a concussion. We're driving from St. Charles to Chicago, and the directions were given are that when you get to this exit, I think it was like exit 3, you want to take the exit, and your hotel will be right there off the highway. Now, we had left the event at like 10 o'clock at night, so it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're getting there, and all of a sudden, if we're getting ready to turn on to exit 3, we have this great big giant lit up sign right there in the middle of the exit ramp saying exit closed. We're thinking, okay, we can go a mile or two to get where we need to be. 17 miles later, we had traveled almost 15 miles into another state.
Oh, no.
We had to turn around. That's the first exit that was open. I turned back around. It took us almost an hour to get back to our hotel. We finally get into our hotel at like 4:30 in the morning. I get a couple hours sleep, really nervous about the concussion. And like I said, I had gone to try to get something to snack on, try to get my stomach to settle. And I come back, and the room I was in, there were 2 wrestlers that were doing moonsaults on the bed. So I'm like, well, I guess
when the story got back to me, though, it was you and Freddie Jacobs who were doing the moonsaults, is what I had heard.
No. That definitely wasn't me. Definitely wasn't me on that. Another one I can think of was really a unique story. Wasn't really a road story, so to speak, but it kind of was. I remember many years ago, I had an opportunity to referee a match with Samoa Joe. And I'm sitting there, and I'm getting there early and trying to find out who everybody is that's on the event, because I was relatively new to the promotion. And I'm sitting there and talking with him, introduce myself and whatnot. And all of a sudden, like half hour later, all I hear is this yelling and screaming. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? Sounded like a fight was going on. I walk back in the locker room, and I see Samoa Joe yelling in his headset that he had in his ear while playing PlayStation, the PS Vita, with somebody else waiting for the event to start. And I do have one more to share, and this is very recent. I don't think that I don't think other than the Dynamo Pro Media Department I've shared this one before with anybody. Back, it was about 6-7 months ago. Had an opportunity to go up to Kansas City for an event, and it was myself and my broadcast colleague Drake Lee, and we had another person in our car. We left here. We drive to Kansas City, get to referee on the event. Drake Lee was doing some commentary and doing some interviews and things along the line. And as I said before, I don't necessarily agree with the guy, but he does have a knowledge for what's going on in wrestling. So anyway, we're driving, we get done, we get everything taken care of, and we're getting ready to leave. And we drive across Kansas City, and we decide to stop at a restaurant. And we're getting ready to stop and go in and eat before we make the drive from Kansas City back to St. Louis. And all of a sudden, I'm in the car, and I got out of the car, and I'm walking, and I'm just about in the restaurant, and all I hear is Drake Lee just start grumbling. I mean, just like he's throwing a temper tantrum. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? So I come back, like, is everything okay? And he's like, no. And somehow or another, he had a can of hairspray in his bag.
Oh.
And for some reason or another, I think that's one thing. If you know anything about Drake Lee, you don't mess about his hairspray. That's one of the things he's actually put into writing as a writer in his contracts that he signs, is he has to have a particular brand of hairspray. And I'm sitting there, and he had managed somehow or another to break the nozzle of his hairspray can in such a way that the hairspray is leaking out of the top of the container.
Oh no.
So I'm sitting here going, okay, this is not good. So we go in, we eat. He's all flustered and angry. And then we're getting ready to eat, and it was kind of warm in the restaurant. So I'm sitting here and talking with those that had traveled with us. All of a sudden, I see Drake Lee about ready to stand up on the table that we were eating dinner at. He was going to try to stand on the table to turn on the pull switch to get the ceiling fan above our table in the restaurant to work. So, I mean, and again, those are, I mean, they may not be totally what's there. Let's see. I do say that I've had a lot of great road trips over the years, a lot of great travels. And like I said, pro wrestling, we talk about knowing all these great people. And I can tell you right now, all the different road trips with guys like Drake Lee, like Chris Rodell, like Eric Davis, like Scott Murphy, a lot of great people. That's one of the best things I will take from pro wrestling is the idea of being able to be on the road and take and okay, I got one more. And GQ, you would know this. I don't think I ever told Ruby this one either. I remember back when I was active in my career, and we get a call. This was back when the cell phones had first come out.
Yeah.
And they were still probably about the size of a small brick.
Right.
And we were going to go over to a friend of ours, and we were going to watch a pay-per-view. So we stopped, and we were asked to pick up some White Castles.
Yep.
And we're told to pick up 40 White Castles.
Okay.
Now, my first reaction is there's not that many people there to eat that many White Castles. So we get there, and we place the order, and the guy that rode with me, he and I just sat there, shook our heads, because we had two orders ahead of us. One had an order for 80 White Castles, and the one before them ordered 200 White Castles.
Oh my God.
That was probably the beast up in that car. I'm just saying.
No, I wasn't. But we sit there and we get our burgers and we head to the event. And I stopped because we were watching the event downstairs in this friend of ours' apartment. And I went upstairs to grab a soda. And I come back down, and in like the 3 minutes I was there, it's like they polished off all the White Castles.
Oh,
and I'm like,
God.
we ordered 40 of these. How do we go through this? And the guy I rode with was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it wasn't like, oh, they had hid them from me. No, they actually had eaten all the White Castles. So we get done, and about right before the thing ends, a friend of mine starts complaining about his stomach hurting.
Oh man!
And he thought he was being funny. He had eaten way too many of them, and needless to say, it was one of those where that we learned our lesson that you don't speed eat when you're with people, because it did not turn out well.
Oh.
So, but like I said, gentlemen, pro wrestling, the road trips, the stories, all of those things, that's what makes pro wrestling from a referee and announcer's perspective so much more fun and exciting. I mean, the idea of sitting down, learning about the people you travel with it's those friendships. And again, I want to say thank you to you two gentlemen, because like I said, I've known you guys for years upon years, and there's so many things we've learned about each other over the years just from the travels. And again, I wouldn't trade anything in the world for that. And again, it's not only the wrestlers, but it's the wrestlers, it's the announcers, it's the promoters, it's the fans, everybody who makes up what wrestling is today deserves a big thank you, because without you, pro wrestling is not nearly what it is today.
Exactly. Well, I mean, definitely some good stuff there. Once again, we've been talking with Luke Roberts, currently with for a good while now with Dynamo Pro Wrestling, and so that and a lot of insight, memories, stories, everything else that they shared here for us here tonight. Before we get you out of here, is there anything that you want to plug social media wise? Anything with Dynamo Pro? Anything going on with them? Anything you want to promote with them?
Well, right now, I got to tell you right now, first thing to do is make it a point, even though the pandemic has pretty much shut down the majority of professional wrestling, make it a point to check out Dynamo Pro, all Dynamo Pro social media. We got Dynamo Pro on Facebook, Dynamo Pro on Twitter, Dynamo Pro on Instagram, Dynamo Pro on YouTube. Also make it a point to check out DynamoProWrestling.com. I know that in the course of the last couple months, for those that are history aficionados in the world of professional wrestling, Dynamo Pro Wrestling has published 3 stories. All 3 of them are related to the Dynamo Pro Heavyweight, D1, and Tag Team Championships, all the way back from their inception to, and I believe, bear with me here a minute, I know that the Heavyweight Championship is reflective all the way to the current champion, Lights Out Adrian Surge. I know the Dynamo Pro D1 Championship story is reflective all the way to Camaro Jackson. And prior to the situation in the tag team division, the Dynamo Pro Tag Team Championship is also up to date as well. Also, Dynamo Pro is featuring right now on their website, I believe they just released the first of several, even though we can't necessarily have actual interviews like you would see on things on like YouTube or on DVDs or things of the sort. Dynamo Pro Wrestling has been releasing interviews with competitors. We have been keeping in contact with our competitors. I know if you were to go to Dynamo Pro Wrestling right now, DynamoProWrestling.com, I believe the first one was just released a few days ago, with Dynamo Pro having 15 questions with D1 champion Camaro Jackson. I know there's a lot of wrestlers in Dynamo Pro Wrestling who's conducted interviews with Chris Rodell, with myself, and with Drake Lee. Give you an opportunity to see a little more into the lives of Dynamo Pro wrestlers, both inside and outside of the ring. Again, a lot of great podcasts. Make it a point. I know you're probably still watching. A lot of people are watching this now. Make it a point to follow all these great podcasts. I mean, again, we talked about it earlier tonight. You talked about Night Out. You talked about the Lime Time Podcast Network. Make it a point, check them out. A lot of great content. They've had a lot of great guests, and there's a lot more scheduled here in the next few weeks. Again, that's pretty much about it, gentlemen. Like I said, I want to say a big thank you to you guys. I want to say a big thank you to all the fans who've been supporting Dynamo Pro Wrestling and pro wrestling in general for quite a while. Also, I want to thank Dynamo Pro Management for giving me the opportunity to come on the program tonight. I got to tell you guys, this is really cool in the idea of where usually I'm talking about upcoming events. I'm talking about what's going on in Dynamo Pro. But to have the opportunity to come on the program here tonight, episode 10, which I feel good, I'm the first in the double digits.
Yep.
I mean, again, I feel very honored to be the first of the double digits when it comes to the Lime Time Podcast Network.
You were 10 when you started, so
that's true. That's true. But when it comes down to look at it, make it a point. Keep an eye on them. Follow them on social media. make it a point, if you haven't already given them a like here tonight on the Facebook Live, make it a point to give them all those free actions. Make it a point to show your support, subscribe on YouTube. They had a lot of great interviews coming up. I know for a fact that they ask those hard-hitting questions, talking about a lot of things in the world of professional wrestling, both on the local and national scene. Gentlemen, I got to tell you, tonight's been great. It's been a great time here. We got to do this more often. and I'm going to tell you right now, like I said, we're going to make it a point. And Ruby, I think you hit right on point. Hopefully, somewhere down the road in the not too near distant future, hopefully you'll be able to see the program and the Lime Time Podcast Network live at the Cauliflower Alley Club, other major events. Guys, I got to tell you right now, it's been great. I want to thank you for having me on the program. Thank you for everything that you do for the world of professional wrestling. Hope you guys stay safe. I know we still got a lot of things going on here with this COVID-19 pandemic, but like I said, once we get through things, I think the professional wrestling world is going to go to a whole nother level. And it starts with great programs, great promotions, and great fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And GQ, any final thoughts with Luke here? PP. Oh God. Oh my God.
I gotta go.
Well, I know you drink like a fish, man. But anyway, yeah, brother. Thanks a lot for coming on here tonight. And like I said, we got a lot more stuff in the works. We just got to solidify because we might have a change of schedule for next week's show. But we definitely will be having a guest on. And of course, like I said, they got to stay tuned, and we'll let y'all know. But Luke, yeah, once again, Luke, thank you very much for coming on and sharing all of that here with us tonight. It's definitely been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you very much,
I enjoyed
gentlemen.
it too, Luke.
Thank you very much, GQ, Ruby. Always a pleasure, and like I said, look forward to talking to you soon right here on the Lime Time Podcast Network.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. That is Luke Roberts, and definitely good stuff here for you tonight here on the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. First one in double digits with number 10. Yeah, so good stuff, GQ. Yep. And can't wait for number 11 coming up next week. We will have a guest, guys. Trust me. But we just want to make sure that we thank everybody for tuning in here tonight. For those tuning in for the first time, we definitely thank you very much. Follow us, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Definitely subscribe to us on YouTube. We're trying to get our subscriber base up as well. And we actually had some people commenting and watching on YouTube tonight. So I know GQ is in a rush to get out of here. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. And, well, that was Luke Roberts. Hey, I did another mountain. I didn't mean to do that song anyway, but hey, thanks again, Luke. for playing your song again. But hey, this is the end for certain. So, for Mr. GQ getting up and making a run to the bathroom, I'm just going to sit and chill. So, for Mr. GQ, I am Rough Cut Rick Ruby. Thank you very much once again for joining us here on the Falls Count Everywhere podcast. We will see you later. See ya. Peace. Go like us. Twitter too. Read it all. We'll see you later.